We'll talk to someone who makes a living and who contends that you may not even know it, but you may own the house you're being foreclosed on. You may live in a house that's being foreclosed on. You may own it. We'll be back in a moment after the news, AM 570 KVI.
Now, your 570 KVI news break. The Bryan Suit Show is back on 570 KVI.
AM 570 KVI, the Bryan Suit Show. Good morning, everybody. The FBI, I'm at FBI.gov. For the reports and publications, 2009 Mortgage Fraud Report Year in Review. One of the things that the FBI goes down are categories of mortgage fraud. One of the things that they do not deal with is what you might call foreclosure fraud, which is what B of A is having to deal with. A lot of banks are dealing with because there are some people that are going to courts and saying, are you really seriously telling me that this one person signed 400,000 foreclosure orders to a judge in the span of 5 days? Because there's all sorts of horror stories now coming out. If you're on the verge of foreclosure or in the middle of it, and you're desperate, you hear a lot of different things. And this is something that we even talked with the Attorney General, Rob Mckenna, about a week and a half ago, because there's a story that was emailed to me and came in front of me from a couple different jurisdictions that some people in Oregon had come up with a legal instrument that challenges the mortgage fraud and the foreclosure to get to a point where there was a default judgment that awarded them their house, because your mortgage, you buy it you get it from one place. A couple months later, you get a thing in the mail that says, how your mortgage came through blank. Well, now we own it, or we own it, and maybe we're going to pass it on. In that process, everybody has to cross the T's and dot the I's, and when those don't occur, is what is one aspect of foreclosure fraud or mortgage fraud. We talked to the Attorney General about this about a week and a half ago. Had he heard about this? And this is what he said.
That conceivably could happen. I doubt that's going to happen very often, but it could happen. The point is that the financial system has become so complicated that it is becoming difficult in some cases to determine who the actual owner is because of the way the mortgages are bought and sold, sliced up, repackaged. It's a mess.
That's Rob Mckenna, the Attorney General, from a week and a half ago. So I was contacted by a couple of people about this, and so on the air. Allan Hennessey is the president of Federal Trustee Services down in Tacoma. He joins us, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Sure, Brian. Good morning.
Okay, so now you emailed me, and you emailed me Obama's mortgage documents literally from his from 5450 Southeast View Park Unit, Chicago, Illinois, 80615. And Obama's not being foreclosed on, but you mailed them to me as an example of what you're talking about. That in the release of mortgage, I see that there's a chain of people named Marcia Crane who are supposed to have signed off here and here and here in 2002 and in 2007. And they're completely different signatures, which may indicate it's a different person. But so anyway, let's start at the beginning. Legally do you have a leg to stand on in the foreclosure process that would result in someone owning their house?
Brian, it's kind of like how Rob Mckenna said. These things are so complex that literally what has to be done is you have to start at the most basic point and start to pick this thing apart forensically. Kind of like when you watch that show CSI, they don't just look for one piece of information or any sort of indicator. They look at a whole list of things. And so when we start to pick these things apart in the example that you have in front of you, you've got basically the name of a woman that clearly the signatures are from completely different hands. One leans to the right, one leans to the left, one straight up and down. And even further than that, is interesting to note that this same woman that's signing on behalf of Chase Home Finance and signing off on this document, on another document she's signing off representing a different company. So how many jobs does this woman have, and how can she possibly be certifying under penalty of perjury that these things are absolutely true? So this is.
And so I guess to tie it all together, people are going to say, well, sure, if they're fraudulent on the documents, how does that let someone own their house? They still own the house, but now they have an employee who's committing fraud. How does that end up with somebody owning the house that they're being foreclosed on?
Sure. And so with these public records documents that we're talking about here, which is in these examples, that's really just kind of the beginning. So when we're talking about all of these issues with foreclosures and mortgages, what we're really talking about is unjust enrichment. Certainly we can't have all these homeowners going around and getting their house for free and without paying for it and all that kind of stuff. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants everybody to have everything for free in this country. However, the same rule applies to these banks, these foreign entities that are here on our soil now, that without any sort of burden of proof for the affirmative relief that they're seeking to take a house, they're essentially getting unjust enrichment. The reason why we know this is because of the complex structure of these financial transactions, where essentially we know for a fact, after digging deeper than these public records documents and forensically looking at the loan documents and trailing back the trail of breadcrumbs of where exactly this thing went, we know that through a complex financial transaction, the truth of the matter is, in most cases, that this loan was absolutely terminated and paid off through various structures, including federal bailout money.
Well, now, and you're talking about what we heard about with the mortgage bundled securities leading, many say, to the economic collapse from December of 2007 to today. There's not a case where, like, my mortgage, 31% of it is owned in Germany and 22% is owned by a bank in Korea. I mean, it's the mortgage is still held or owned by somebody somewhere. I mean, 100% of the mortgage has to be in someone's hands, right?
Well, that's what most of us would think, Brian, but the truth of the matter here is that in order for these entities to be protected, to shield themselves from any sort of claims for predatory lending or deceptive lending practices, for some of these unconscionable loans that were made from people where, you had like a payment shock where your payment was $1,200 a month and now all of a sudden it's $2,700 a month. Those are loans that somebody could potentially make a claim for predatory lending and get treble damages in front of a jury trial for that. However, these banking entities, what they did to shield themselves from that sort of liability was they structured these things to where when they pulled them together and they put them all in a blender and blended them all up, they essentially destroyed all of these documents. And as a matter of fact, we have testimony in depositions from people that work for these investment banks where when these loans were funded and as soon as they were pulled together, they had shredding parties where they were shredding these original documents so the evidence of it would be completely gone. And so what ends up happening now is instead of there actually just being that typical structure where you have the note that's in the safe, in the vault, where anybody can come and inspect it at any time, what they did was they converted these structures. So now they converted them so where they made so much money because of the guarantees that were made, some of the AAA ratings by the rating agencies that were done on these, and essentially what they pulled together and sold certificates of on Wall Street was not the actual loans themselves or the loan documents, but it was...
Yeah, I mean, they're not walking around on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with a bag full of mortgages, in other words.
Right.
With physical mortgages or keys to houses or whatever. Okay, but... So now I'm getting some tweets and some emails from people who are pointing out sort of a common question, which is, listen, if people haven't paid, that's a wrong. If they're going to be foreclosed upon, that's the legal right of whoever owns it. At the end of the day, this is all, if people haven't paid, they're going to be foreclosed on. Why try to right a wrong?
Well, and you're absolutely right.
Isn't this just another wrong on top of a wrong?
Sure, and that's why when we opened this call this morning, we talked about unjust enrichment and saying that nobody should get a free ride, and certainly our company is. You'll never hear us out there claiming that somebody should be able to go and get their house for free and clear or anything like that. What we're simply talking about is that if somebody is going to lose their house for non-payment, the party that is looking to be able to take that property should have to prove their right to be able to do so, because what we found. And we've seen all over the news, all over the country now, there's several examples where you have, old lady Jones that's 78 years old, and she bought her house with cash, yet Bank of America still foreclosed on her house and emptied it out while she was on vacation. Now we've got another example of another gentleman where.
But that's way different from someone who there's loads of people out there telling people just stop paying your mortgage, because what's the point? They're going to foreclose anyway, so they're just not paying. They're living rent free and they owe somebody money.
Mm-hmm. Well, that could be very true. So the question it really is who has the right to foreclose on the property. Because, Brian, if I were to go around and just start foreclosing on everybody because I knew nobody would challenge me, does that make it right?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what we're talking about. Because essentially what you have are a number of foreign entities that are coming into our country and are ending up owning all these properties when they have clearly no legal right to do so.
And now where the rubber meets the road, where has anybody actually done this? Effectively, what you're saying is someone's being foreclosed, and they shoot a letter off to whoever, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and the letter says, "Show me that you actually own this place." And if they don't, they're just going to find it, right? I mean, how mechanically, how is this supposed to work?
Okay, well, basically, whenever you send off some sort of communication with your bank, they don't really have anything that holds their feet to the coals in order to respond properly. As a matter of fact, we know that the majority of the time they simply ignore that communication and just keep on going with the process. They do whatever they can to kind of make you feel like they're trying to help the situation and get you a modification. And then at the last, they tell you, well, we need you to resend in your paperwork. We never received it. We hear these stories repeatedly over and over again. They're always the same. Now, what we do with our company is every situation is different. So it all starts with the original loan documents and digging through them forensically to pick apart the flaws and the errors and really just the facts of the matter. What exactly happened here? What was this transaction that happened? And then taking it from there and let's see, where did it go? So by digging through the Securities and Exchange Commission and their database, and all of the other public records resources at state and federal government levels, we can find out exactly what happened for that particular transaction. Now, once we get that information in hand and our in-house attorney signs off on a report, now we can take that information and through a certified officer of the state as a witness, they can now present that information to the bank and give them due process to respond to this. Now, we know that when we're laying it out crystal clear like that, we're not making any blanket accusations that, oh, we think that you were involved in fraud. It's more of, look right here in black and white. What do you have to say about this? Explain yourself. And they never respond or never respond completely. A lot of times they'll just give a blanket denial of what is being said there, at which point when they fail to respond, that witness of the state now certifies on behalf of the state of Washington that party failed to respond, and they are admitting their agreement to what it is that was presented to them. So now from there,
by not contesting it in the court of law, that's like a ceding to the contentions. Or if you don't say anything back, point goes to the offense on that, basically.
Sure, it's a default judgment, is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so.
Okay, well, we're at a point where I got to take a break. So if people want information, is it okay if I put it on our Facebook page?
Sure.
Or where would you want people to go?
Sure. We've got a website, federaltrusteeservices.com. You can reach us there. You can send us an email at info@federaltrusteeservices.com, and I'd be more than happy to forward that document if you want to see the evidence about President Obama being a victim of this robo-signing phenomenon that we're talking about.
Yeah, no, you sent it to me. Like I say, it looks like 5 different people are Marsha Crane on Obama's loan documents. And so if I go home and I look at mine, that stack of stuff, I'm looking for the signatures. I'm looking to see that they're the same, and that tells me nothing, or that tells me that nothing happened. But if I see different signatures, then I should be concerned.
Well, signatures are one thing that we look at. The dates are other things that we look at. The names of people are other things that we look at. The terms are in there. There's all sorts of things, and that's just on the public records documents. There's a whole other subject that we need to continue talking about, and that's Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems Incorporated, and that is probably the largest indicator of fraud in a mortgage because it affects over 62 million mortgages in this country.
A lot of people see that, they don't know what it is. All right, so we'll link it through our Facebook page. This is it certainly piques my curiosity, and like I say, the Attorney General said he's heard of this happening, and and doesn't know of any reason why it shouldn't. So, all right. Well, Allan Hennessey from Federal Trustee Services, thanks